We are exploring what I call the love commandments. Last time, we learned about the man who asked Jesus, "Which is the great commandment?" Jesus told him the answer, "Love God." That is the greatest commandment, and it came straight from the Old Testament law. But then Jesus had a surprise for this man. He asked for the number 1 commandment, but Jesus is going to tell him number 2 also. Have you ever been to the grocery store and seen the letters BOGO? That stands for buy one, get one free. You can get 2 for the price of 1. The man asked for 1 commandment. Jesus is going to tell him 2. I told you the greatest commandment. Now here is number 2. Love your neighbor. That is the second great commandment. Jesus is not making this one up either. This also comes straight from the Old Testament law. You find it in Leviticus 19:18. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And then Jesus said this, on these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. The word hang makes me think of hooks. These 2 commandments are like 2 hooks. Here are the 10 commandments. The first 4 are about God. They hang on the first hook. The last 6 are about other people. They hang on the other hook. Love God and love other people. That covers all 10 of the 10 commandments. That is why these are the greatest commandments. But now the lawyer has another question for Jesus. Who is my neighbor? Who are the people I am supposed to love? Jesus answered his question with a story. It is a famous story. A man is traveling to another city. He is attacked by robbers. They beat him and they take his money. They leave him lying on the ground, hurt and unable to get up. Jesus said they left him half dead. Then a priest came down the road. When he saw the injured man, he walked by on the other side. He did not want to stop and help. Then a Levite came down the same road. He did the same thing. He walked by and did not stop to help. Finally came a man from Samaria. The Jews and the Samaritans did not like each other. You would not expect him to stop and help. But he did stop. He bandaged the man's wounds. He carried him on his donkey to an inn where he could get help. Then Jesus asked, which one of these was a good neighbor? Of course, the one who stopped to help. He was a good neighbor. But do you remember the original question? The lawyer asked, who is my neighbor? So what is the answer to that question? Who is my neighbor? You have to figure it out for yourself from the story. My neighbor in this story is someone who's in trouble, someone who needs my help, someone I don't know, someone maybe I don't even like, but someone who has come into my life and they need help. What do you think of when you think of a neighbor? Do you have a friend that lives close to you that you play with? It is easy to love that kind of neighbor. But how about this man? In most cities, you can see homeless people, like this one, living on the streets. Is he your neighbor? Do you love him? This is like the man in Jesus' story. Do you care about him? Do you want to help him? Now, I know there is not much that you can do if you are just a child. You should not try to help a stranger without talking to your parents. Even if you are a grown-up, it is hard to know how to help this man. Do you see his cup on the ground? He is asking for money. But giving this man money might be a bad idea. If you give him money, he might waste it on bad things. These people are called homeless. You might think his biggest need is a house. But in most cities, there are places where homeless people can go to sleep. The government will help them find a house. But sometimes they won't go there. Sometimes they don't want help, or they won't agree to the rules to live there. People try to help them, and they are hard to help, so maybe you cannot give him a home. A better idea might be to give him food. Everyone needs food, and you cannot use food for other bad things. These people often ask for money to buy food. I always say, I will not give you money, but I will give you food. Because I want to obey the second command. I want to love my neighbor, even if it is not easy. Now that is a hard kind of neighbor for you to help. Can you think of a situation where you might be able to help a stranger? Suppose you are at school or at church, and you are talking and having fun with your friends, and then a new person comes, a visitor or a new student. They don't know anyone, and they don't know what to do. Who will go help them? That would be a good example of loving your neighbor. You could go help them. But love your neighbor is not the whole commandment. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. How much do you love yourself? When you are hungry, do you try to get food for yourself to eat? If you are tired, do you try to rest? Do you like to get presents for yourself? We naturally love ourselves. That's easy. We don't need a command to do that. If we are not careful, we will always be thinking about ourselves and what we want. Jesus said this in another way that helps people to understand. In Matthew 7:12, he said, treat people the same way you want them to treat you. We call this the golden rule. This is a great rule for life. Do you want people to be kind to you? Then you be kind to them. Do you want people to listen to you? Then you be a good listener. Do you want people to help you? Then you be a good helper. But listen to what Jesus says next. This is the law and the prophets. This is exactly what he said about the great commandments. This is love your neighbor. In other words. So, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the second great commandment. So, love God and love your neighbor. Those are the two love commandments.